I felt like a massive failure after, having a nice life, nice cars, nice holidays and things, and everything's gone.
Welcome to another episode of the I Love Monday podcast. Today we have the experienced property guru, Saj Hussain. Welcome to the podcast.
Thank you so much. Thank you for that lovely introduction.
It's been a long time coming. I think we've been planning this for a good few months.
We have been messaging back and forth for many months.
But I'm privileged to have you.
Well, thank you.
In our studio office today. You're obviously very well known in the property industry, not just in Birmingham, but nationally and probably globally as well. But Saj obviously started from somewhere. So tell us about a teenage Saj and how his upbringing was.
Yeah, I guess my upbringing is not that different from many second generation kids maybe born of migrant families. So parents came from Pakistan in the 60s. I was born late 60s. Show my age a little bit, and we didn't have very much. Very loving family, a great family. But I think by my teens, I started realizing, well, why don't we have those things, and why can't we go on that skiing holiday that the other kids are going on? So we realized actually maybe we don't have very much, and that's where you start understanding money a little bit better, and that's where I also got interested in computers very early. For those that remember the ZX Spectrum, the Commodore 64, this is very back in the 80s.
Before my day.
Yeah, and that's kind of my fascination to computing started at that time. So I was interested in computers, and I started selling computer games to other kids in school and making a little bit of money, and started buying computer equipment because that was the only way I could afford to do that. And that's really where my, if you like, desire for making money started at that point.
So you mentioned about not having privileges such as other people in terms of going on holidays. How did you find that out? Was it just like you were in school and people were going on holiday and you were at home?
Yeah, I think at that time when I was at school, there was this trend of designer clothes and design tops just becoming a kind of trendy way to dress, and everybody would be covered in logos of different clothes they were wearing. Actually, when you start looking at the cost of some of those items, like a £100 tracksuit at that time was like, what on earth is that? My trainers are like $5.99. So how does that work? And saying, Mom, can we have those? No, we can't. Why not? We can't afford to buy those. We don't have the money to do that. And that's where you realize actually maybe there's a difference. Maybe some people have money, some people don't. And, why don't we? And how can we? Is from an early age I started thinking about how.
So what did that trigger in you when you were asking yourself how?
I think I'm an only son and I have two sisters, and in our culture, the son normally is the one that will get looked up to, will be a doctor or engineer, and he's going to be somebody that will maybe take the family up in terms of if you like, status, earnings and stuff like that. And I went through the education system, but no real desire to be academic, just about enough to get through. Because I was thinking about, well, I don't want to let my parents down, but at the same time, I don't really want to go down this route. I want to understand how to make money, to build wealth and things like that. And some other relatives that we had did quite well as well. And then these are things that started making me think about, well, we don't have things. And so when you say what did it trigger, it's realization that actually we don't have things, but it doesn't have to be that way.
And what did that make you do? So was there anything you started to do even at that young age?
So at that time, it was I really wanted to buy a computer, and my parents bought my first computer for me at that time. But computers are not like they are today. So at that time, it was a box, and you had to buy a separate screen, a separate disk drive, a separate printer. So a computer on its own didn't actually do anything, and then all the software with it as well. So then it's the case, okay, they scrimped and saved and managed to buy me this box, but the box didn't do anything. Well, they weren't going to buy anything else from me, couldn't really afford to. So it's the case, well, how can I create something? And that's where I thought, actually, well, I know where the company was near the school who was importing software. I could buy software from them, sell them games to other kids in the school, make a few pounds from that, and that's where it started. It started from, really.
And then, is that what led you to open your own IT business?
Yeah, I loved computers for a very long time as I went through college and through university. And by the time we'd left university, I was already buying and selling computer equipment and stuff. And then it was natural progression. I was interested in business and I was interested in computers because it made logical sense at the time. But that time, PCs were just becoming the common thing, machines appearing on office desks for the first time. And so we had clients, it was solicitors, accountants, estate agents practices, where we'd be putting the first PCs on their desks. And then it went on to, oh, well, how do we make this machine talk to that machine? And then setting up the networks, and it kind of grew from there. So there was a lot of learning because although I went to university and had done a business degree and an IT degree, business and IT, the belief is you know everything there is to know. Very quickly you realize you know very little. And you try and figure it out as you go along because there's nobody else to show you. So I've not been to an environment where you go into a corporate environment, you learn anything. Actually, I could probably do this better myself. Let's go and start my own. It was you just figuring it out as you're going along.
So I don't know how IT was then, because at the moment IT changes rapidly.
Yes.
And there's changes left, right, centre. So you can't stand still.
Yes.
So how was it then when you had your IT business? Because obviously you came out with an IT
It was
degree.
very, very fast moving then as well. Probably faster then. It was evolving very, very quickly. I think we've got to a point now where it can't evolve so much that it's now evolving slower. But at that time it was moving very, very quickly. And things were constantly changing, software, equipment and things like this. So what happened is, firstly I got into a partnership with a friend from school and we fell out very quickly. Over how we were going to run the business. So we kind of split ways, probably within a year, 2 years of working together. And then I kind of went off my own and we continued to do the same kind of business, but on our own. And what I found was really profitable was effectively selling time, skill. So we'd built knowledge. So I'd constantly be learning. And because I was interested in it, if you ever think about something that you have an interest in, your knowledge grows really quickly. And you don't even think that actually I'm learning because you're interested in that subject. And that's what it was for me with computers. My knowledge was growing really fast because I was obsessed about learning. There was no internet in those days. It was just books and other people. You could maybe, if you got lucky, you could pick somebody's brain and try and learn stuff. So as my knowledge grew, I could sell that information on, I can connect this computer to that one. I know how this works. And then I got various qualifications in Microsoft, Cisco, Novell, stuff like this. And really, by that time, I had engineers that were working for me as well. And they would go out, they would earn money for us. So that was a nice business, the maintenance, the service business. The challenge was, because really at that time, my focus was chasing money. Where's the money? And that was in terms of revenue, how much money are we taking in? And there were a number of people selling volumes of computers. And I thought, we could do this. We could do this better, cheaper, faster, whatever it might be. And we started selling computer equipment. So the revenue was in the millions, but our margin was tiny on that because you have to be competitive. There's so many other people doing it. And really what we should have done is stuck to the service business because that's a skilled business. That's where there's a lot less competition. You can charge higher fees, higher margins on that. And eventually, I think probably 14 odd years, I ran that business. And it went through a phase where we kind of struggled, then it kind of boomed. We made quite a lot of money. And then ultimately, really through a series of bad decisions on my part, I put the business in bad shape and it kind of, the whole thing just collapsed and pretty much lost everything at that point.
How did you put the business in bad shape? Was it because of the computers? Or?
It was mostly the volume sales because we were focused on turnover rather than profit, and so our margins were really slim. And then also in tech, we have a lot of returns where people bring equipment back. And, oh, this doesn't work. Well, actually, there may not be a fault with it. It might just be it's misused or it's got damage, and then we can't return that to the manufacturer. So we're absorbing those losses, but those losses are not really built into your profit. There isn't enough there to do that. And so that was probably the major root of our problems. So we were just focused on we need to sell more. And as I says, although we were selling millions of pounds of equipment, margins were absolutely tiny, and we had 20 plus staff as well at time, and all the overheads that come with it as well. And it just wasn't sustainable. And what I was doing, every kind of bit of money I'd made, I was kind of putting it back into it. And in fact, we'd already bought a property, my wife and I, at that time, because my dad kept pushing me, you need to buy a house, you need to go and buy a house. And that had gone up in value quite a bit in the early 2000s. And all that money, literally, we took from there and put into the business as well, and it kind of all ultimately went.
So did you have to make a decision to close a business, or was it just...
Yeah, no, it was, I put it into administration in the end. But that was, at that point, that was probably the most painfulest thing that I had done, because it was not just I had to accept failure and say, you know what, I got to put my hand up, this thing is just not, it hasn't worked out, it's all gone wrong. It was a realization, actually, I've got 20 odd people working for me, and their families, the people that support as well. So actually it affects a lot of people, as well as my own family as well. So it was a tough time when I look back now at that time. I'd say probably emotionally and mentally I was probably at my lowest point, but not realize at the time that that's what was happening, and not accepting responsibility, still blaming everybody else. That took me some time to accept. Really, it's only my fault. That's why we were there, nobody else's.
Why do you think that is? That it took you a long time to accept?
I think there was a lot of arrogance, if I'm being honest with you now. I think at that time in my life, I was just focused on, yes, we're invincible, we can do anything, we can do everything. And it's a very humbling experience when, you kind of, everything just slips away from your fingers and you think, well, actually, we don't control everything. We can't, sometimes our belief is bigger than the reality. And so that time I was thinking, no, it's not my fault. It's the suppliers, it was the customers, it's the staff, it's market conditions. It's everybody's fault except mine. That was the belief that I had. Or if they didn't do this, or they had done that, and if they only did this, really, I'm the one in charge. I'm making decisions, not them. So, it took time to accept and realize that.
And how do you break the news to your 20 plus staff? Because that must have been
that was really difficult. That was incredibly difficult. That was a really, really hard time, because they could see that we are busy, but busy doesn't mean business.
Yeah.
So it's busyness rather than business, and they not realize actually the state of the finances, or what we were dealing with at that time. And so for many of them, it was just a shock. What, we're not coming back on Monday. That's it. And that was just so hard to deal with.
What would you do differently if you were to go back?
Actually, many things I'd probably do differently. I don't live in regret. I think everything's a learning. Everything happens for a reason. I think there's so many things I could have done differently. We are where we are because of the decision we choose to make every single moment of the day. I'm here now because some decision I made earlier. It's very easy to make a slightly different decision and not be even here now. It's so many different ways that we can choose, and we have the choice. As I said earlier, one of the things that we should not have done is ventured into equipment sales, because it was box shifting. It wasn't really technology. You were just selling boxes. It might have been a TV in there, a toaster. It made no difference. You were just selling boxes. Whereas the real profitability and skill was in the knowledge and the maintenance contracts, the service agreements that we had, the ability to kind of set up networks, the knowledge base that we had. That was where the real value was, and that could have grown to something quite substantial. But the mistake I made was, okay, that's nice, but that doesn't give us mega turnover, which is what I was chasing.
That is your bottom line that you should have been.
That's the most important thing, is keeping a close eye on the numbers. And even now, even in property, when at the beginning I kind of struggled, when I look back, I think the only thing we should have done differently was just focus on one thing rather than trying to do everything, because everything can look appealing, and it can, when you have an entrepreneurial mindset, what that means is you are constantly looking for solutions to problems you see everywhere, and you think, I could fix that, we can do that better, I know how to do that, we can also do that. That's how your brain is thinking all the time. So you have a million business ideas a day. I think the important thing is not to execute on them, to park them and say, okay, that's a great idea, we'll come back to it. And most of the time they just fizzle away because it's in the moment thing. And if you're still itching about it a month later, then maybe you should do something with it. But most of the time it's in the spur. So it's taking a look back at what's our core business, what is it we're trying to do, where is it we're trying to get to, and how will making this decision support or damage the route that we're on.
I think I look at the business we've built here, and it's the same as we initially focused on lettings, and that's obviously our bread and butter. That gives us our regular income. But then sales looks glamorous because you're getting your $4,000, $5,000, $10,000 fee, and then obviously we've got property management. Then HMOs look glamorous, and then social housing looks glamorous, and it's like you want to do everything.
Yes.
And we're lucky enough that we've got good staff in certain places where we can do a lot of it, but we can't do everything. We can have a maintenance company, but again, then it becomes, where does the focus?
Yes.
And then what happens is, rather making your 20, 30, 50 grand a month here, you're making 5 in 4 different places, which isn't really sustainable.
Yes. And even as you said, the decision to go from lettings to adding sales in, from a passerby, it seems like a logical thing to do. Oh, they sell property, they manage property. When you look at the back end, those businesses are completely different. The only similarity is they happen to be around property, that's it. All the systems, processes, everything are completely different. One is very sales driven, about getting the front end, and the other one is more detailed, process based, and making sure the systems are in place. They are completely different businesses. Yeah. And when you add one to the other, it's like building a completely different business.
And like you said, it seems logical, but I realized probably about a year and a half after we started sales, when we recruited sales negotiators, they had no idea about lettings.
Yes.
And then when we recruited certain people in lettings, they had no idea about sales. And I'm like, I don't understand that. But you're right. After, there's a realization that it's just because they're both property.
Yes.
Your first few days after you had to close your business, how were you feeling? What were you doing? Because obviously you had a house at that time. Did you have your kids at that time as well?
Yes. So at that time I had 3 kids. I have 4 now I'm blessed with. And I was just feeling, looking back now, I was just depressed for probably a good 6 months. For a few months I was just like, I don't want to talk to anybody, I'm not interested in seeing anybody, just leave me alone. And but that mindset is not sustainable. It's and my family very supportive. It's the realization that nobody's going to come and save you. You can lick your wounds all day long. Nobody's going to come and have pity on you. You've got to get up yourself and understand that actually you're the one that got yourself into this problem, and it's only yourself that can get you out of it. Nobody's going to come pick you up and say, oh, don't worry about it, we'll sort this out, and take you under the arm. It doesn't happen. There's no knight in shining armor that's coming. But it took some time, good few months, to start understanding that actually I've got to get back on my feet. I've got to provide for the family. I can't just wallow in self-pity, which is what I was doing for a while. It's a case of, I felt like a massive failure after, having a nice life, nice cars, nice holidays and things, and everything's gone. That's it. And I didn't want to meet anyone. I didn't want to see anybody because that didn't feel good. What they're going to be thinking, what they're going to be saying. Now I think, and Tony Robbins has this great saying, what other people think about you is their problem, not yours. So, I'm less conscious of how I'm perceived by others now than I was then, but then I was super conscious of that.
Was that more of a cultural thing as well? Because in our communities, it's always, what will other people say?
Yeah, and as we go back to the story earlier, I was saying, as the only son, the expectation is, it's going to be a doctor, an engineer, an accountant, and no, he's a business failure. Do you know what I mean? So, of course, that's super embarrassing as well.
Was there anything specific that led you to just get back up and say, you know what, I need to get going again? Or was it more of a gradual after 2, 3?
Yeah, it was a slow process, and some of the conversations I had with closer friends, and some of the clients that I had as well became friends, and they as a small accountancy practice, legal practices, etc., etc. You know, they had similar challenges of, you know, managing staff, 20, 30 staff, and things like this, and everything that comes with it. So I could relate to them, understand them, so became friends. And some of them were very supportive about, look, you know, you just gotta, you know, get yourself up and dust yourself down, and you gotta move on. You can't just stay in that place. And some of the, if I look back at time, this is probably 2005, 6, that sort of time. Some of the most wealthiest people I knew had either made money from property or kept money in property. And at that time, everything was going up in price anyway. Sort of, you know, it was even, let's say, some of the least smartest people I knew were making money from property. And I'm thinking, well, if they can do it, you know, I'm sure I could probably manage this. And, you know, that's kind of got me there. And I've always been interested in the Sunday Times Rich List, kind of been a fan of that, because I found inspiration in that. How do people make hundreds of millions of pounds? Is that even possible? And there were not as many books I would read at those times, but I was really inspired by some of the stuff I would read in the Sunday Times. And again, so much money was either kept in property, handed down from generations, or it was made from property. And that's got me thinking about property. And at that time, there was a lot of no money down stuff happening, people buying houses for no money, refinancing, and there's the odd little seminar happening, and I started hearing these little bits of snippets, and I've seen a little newspaper advert for a little event that's happening somewhere, and I'd go, okay, maybe I can go along, find out, take a friend along, what's all this about? And of course those are kind of sales events. They don't tell you how it works, they just sell you the dream. Yeah, you can be a millionaire next year, all you got to do is join the course and, you know, buy this and that's it. And it got me thinking. I didn't have the money to sign up for anything, so that didn't happen. But it got me thinking, actually, people are becoming very rich without having any money in property, you know, so it is possible. And I think that got a spark going in me again. That kind of lit something up in me, but actually, you know, and got me motivated again to, oh, you know, I need to find out how to do this.
Apart from going to events, how else were you learning about property? Because nowadays, obviously, you've got YouTube, Instagram, TikTok, you've got your events, your networking events, but how are you learning about different?
So at that time,
deals?
there were a few people, as I said, some clients and friends I had that were making very good money from property, and I'll talk to them about what they're doing, how they bought properties. I had one friend, a very good friend of mine, who'd bought quite a bit of property at that time. And he had a very simple business. I don't want to say too much about him because it'll probably be easy to work out who he is. And essentially, he had a very simple business model, and he used to generate quite a bit of cash. So all he would do, he'd develop relationships with agents, and occasionally when there was a distressed seller, we never called them distressed or motivated sellers, and you know, he'd have some friendly agents would let him know, we can probably get this one a little bit cheap. And he'd buy not the little houses, fairly decent sized houses, you know, your bigger detached houses, maybe 20% off the value or something like that. And then he'd refinance those, and then he'd buy others. So he built up quite a reasonable portfolio doing that. And so people like that, I'd kind of spend time with, understand how does it work, how do you buy them, how does this happen? Because that was my basic learning and understanding of property and property investing in this country, how it works.
And then is that when you thought, you know what, let me just jump in the deep end?
So this is where I was trying to learn about these different seminars and stuff. And there was, back in the day, there were magazines or newspapers like The Loot in London, and we had bargain pages in Birmingham. You scan through those, then you have pages of sell your house fast for cash type adverts. And there are pages and pages of this where people are advertising to buy property. And this is where my eyes started opening up to, actually there's a whole world around property being bought cheaper than what it is. And then I'd be watching every TV program there was around property, as we kind of is the usual starting ground for many people. I think there's a program called maybe Property Ladder by Sarah Beanie at the time. I think that was kind of one that ones who would be an avid watcher of how she'd go and advise people to renovate a property and then they'd add value and sell it on for a profit. And I think this is easy, like, and it just says sometimes you see people who don't, look super smart and you think they've done it. It can't be that hard. I'm sure I could do this.
Is Loot that magazine, not magazine, like a newspaper which just had ads of?
Yeah, essentially, yeah.
And was it like red and
yeah,
red
there used to
logo?
be different coloured versions for different days of the week or something. I can't remember exactly. I think there was a pink one and a yellow one or something.
That.
Yeah, probably way before your time.
So when you got started in property, you had nothing, right?
That's
no
right.
money. So you started with zero.
Yes.
Is it as easy as you thought?
No.
Why?
It was super hard. Because they were saying, all you do is you just find somebody who needs to sell their property cheap, you just buy that, and then, you either sell it on or you remortgage it and stuff, and move to the next one. Okay, I'll go and do that. But actually how? How do I find these people? Why are they going to sell it to me cheap? And how are we going to buy it? How are we going to finance it? There was for every one thing I learned, it would raise 10 questions. And so there were lots of periods I'd go through at the beginning. So it's probably a couple of years I was kind of deeply dabbling around, trying to get started, not really getting any result. And I think I'm doing all the right things. I'm doing all the things I hear should be done, but I'm not getting the same result as Bob over there who's standing on stage saying, yeah, I bought 5 houses, in the last 5 months. I'm thinking, how? So yeah, it definitely was not easy.
So what was your first deal? So how long did it take?
I can't remember exactly the first deal. Essentially, what I was doing is I'd understood that we needed to speak to people that are motivated and keen to sell. So I'd run little adverts in the newspaper. I'd have some leaflets going out, little postcards in windows. So I used to have little trickles of leads coming through. And I would ring them up. I'd kind of understood a little bit about some of the strategies. I'd go along, have a chat with them. And, I was quite happy sitting in someone's front room, having a chat with them about their property and their situation and why they want to sell. And maybe, we could buy it off them. And that bit was fine. So I was doing all the front end stuff that most people found quite difficult, quite easily. And I was literally stumbling across people almost every day at that point. So by the time we got to kind of 2007, the market had fallen flat on its face. And there were plenty of people desperate to sell. And I was thinking, hey, this is so easy now at that point. But I was finding the leads, but actually I didn't know what to do with them. So all I was doing is building this massive spreadsheet of all these people keen to sell. And I remember somebody who was helping me once, he looked at it and he goes, are those all your leads? I said, yeah. He goes, how many of them have you sold? I thought, none. He goes, why? He goes, look at that one. They all got good money. And I said, well, embarrassingly, I don't know how to do it. What do I do? How do I sell them? I haven't got the money to buy any of these. And then he said to me, he goes, so you've been spending time with people who are keen to sell, who are probably facing some problems and challenges. Have you sat there and said to them, yeah, we could probably do this. And you've said to them, you can probably resolve their problems. And then you've come out and done nothing. So don't you think you've misled them? And that got me thinking, actually, he's made a point, a really good point, that didn't sit well with me. He goes, so what are you doing to help them? Because that's what you said you were going to do. And I said, I don't know what to do. So he essentially said to me, stop getting distracted by all these things. Because one day I'd be talking about, I heard you can do £1,000 a month from HMOs. I just need one HMO. My life will be completely different. And somebody else will be talking about you can buy a house for £1 and somebody else will talk about no money down. I'm just all over the place with these different buzzwords and strategies. But I was just dipping my toe and trying different things, not really getting any kind of success or any results. And he said, look, what you have to do is put the blinkers on. Just stop getting distracted by all this noise and just focus on one thing. So earlier you said to me, what's the one thing I do differently? And that's in the property thing, it was exactly the same thing. I had to stop and just focus on one thing. As we were talking about in business, you can do everything. You can do sales, lettings, management, block management, developments, investment. You could do a range of things, but you can't do everything well. You can do one thing really well, one at a time. And so it was, okay, just see the process through. And if you can't buy these, maybe help somebody else and you can charge them a fee, essentially what we call sourcing today, sell the deal on. And that's essentially how I started doing that. And, I think maybe £1,000, £1,500 first one, I can't remember now, because it kind of snowballed quite quickly after that. Because I think it wasn't that I got brilliant, it was the market conditions were in my favor. that I was finding so many deals. But the challenge at the time was there were very few buyers. I was struggling to sell some of the deals because people were nervous. The market might be still falling right now. It's like trying to catch a falling knife, or I'm not sure it's the right time to buy. Prices are still falling. So I got very good at kind of just doing that process, finding the deals, negotiating them, selling them on, and that's it. And I did that probably a couple of years or so before I even got involved in buying the first property.
So from selling your deals on, or sourcing as it's called today, how did that evolve into you buying your properties?
I think at the beginning, the thought process was, I've understood something that works, so just carry on doing it, just repeating it. Don't risk allowing it to break by doing anything different, because the guidance I got was put the blinkers on and don't do anything else. Just do this thing and it works well. And then I was just, as it started building momentum, I was just obsessed about not doing anything different. This works, so just leave it. But it was also the realization that I was working stupid hours. I've always been, if you like, a bit of a workaholic. I kind of, when I'm going to something, I'm all absorbed into it. And at the time, there was a deal that I'd found. The person was going through a repossession, was getting to the stage where it was about to get repossessed, the property, which is quite common. There's a lot of repossession stuff we used to look at. It meant this guy was going to lose his house. He'd destroy his credit file. The person I was trying to sell the deal to, he'd bought property from me in the past. But on this occasion, he wasn't quite happy that this deal was going to stack out the way the numbers we were saying. And it was just a standard buy-to-let. There was nothing fancy in the deal. It was a simple structure, purchase it, it's cheap. You're going to lock in some really good equity. You'll make okay cash flow as well from that. And with that, he was reluctant to purchase. And I was thinking, I've spent months on this deal. And often it's the case, sometimes these deals, go on for many, many months because either the seller's not quite ready or something else or whatever it might be. And I was thinking, I've spent months on this and I'm going to not really get anything for all my effort I put in. The buyer's going to miss out what I think is a good deal for him. The seller's going to lose out and potentially get repossessed. And I said to him, look, you know what, if you buy it, I'll do all the stuff to deliver what I said it's going to do, which meant it was a little bit of tidying up to do on the property, a little bit of repairs. There wasn't nothing major, and getting it rented for the figure I was saying. So he was, if I remember exactly, he was uncomfortable about how much I was saying it was going to cost. He was thinking it was going to be more, and how much rent I was saying he was going to get. He was thinking it was going to be less. So essentially what happened with that is he bought it. I kind of done the stuff we were going to do, managed to do it in the way I was suggesting we'd be able to. And then the arrangement was just give me a little share from the rental profit each month. And so it turned into a joint venture by accident, if you like. So what happened is after a few months, I realized that little trickle of money, I can't remember the exact amount, it was something like 30, 40 quid that it was, would come into my account every month. And rather like a phone bill going out every month, this was the money that would come in every month. And it slowly dawned on me that actually this would carry on forever because of what we've done. Now, that wasn't going to enable me to just retire and do a few of these, but you had a massive realization that actually if these stacked, it could actually add up to quite a bit of money. And that's where it started shifting towards purchasing. At that time, I destroyed my credit file. I couldn't get any mortgages or anything at that point. I'd kind of screwed everything up. So I wasn't at pace of, well, I'll just take a mortgage on and buy a property or something. That wasn't even an option. And this meant that actually there's a little bit of income now coming in. It was only a few pounds, but it made a massive shift in my mind as to rather than just selling deals on for a fee, 3,000, 5,000 or 7,000 on a good day. But that was it.
You said it was a joint venture by accident. Where did the idea come to you about having a share?
I think it was at the point where I'm going to get nothing out of this anyway now. Where if nothing else, at least let that guy not lose his home in the sense that he's going to lose it to repossession. Let's prevent that and let this guy get a good deal who's bought from me before. And if I get something out of it, then it's better than nothing because I've done all my work anyway. There's not much more for me to do. I've already got it to this point. And if they don't buy and he doesn't sell, then no one gets anything. So just let's sort them out. And then I can't remember exactly how it was in the conversation case. Well, if you deliver what you say you're going to do, then you can have X percentage share of the rent profit or whatever it was. And yeah, that's fine. And it was like not really considered or planned. It was said by accident.
So at that point, you were selling deals, you were making your one-off fees. Did you feel you were back on your feet?
After a little bit of time, because if I'd sold a deal and I've made 2 or 3 grand, even £1,000 was a lot of money for me at that point. Yeah, when it's a case of everything had gone back to zero, it's a case of £1,000 that would really help in just paying my bills each month and keeping a roof over my head. And then when I was selling, say, a couple of deals a month and they're £3,000 or £5,000, I wouldn't say I felt invincible again, but I felt so much more happier. Well, actually, this is something I can build on. I can see this turning into a bigger business.
It gives you a different level of confidence as well,
Yes.
doesn't it? When you're completing deals and you're doing deals regularly, just like, what, I can just push through.
100%. When I train people now in investing in property and finding deals, it's that first deal is always the hardest. And even if it's got a small profit in it, but the confidence it creates once you've got that first one across the line, oh, actually, it's doable. I can do this. That's massive. And I started seeing some of that. Actually, yeah, maybe I can do this.
So when did your passive income, if you want to call it passive income, when did it start snowballing?
So the transition was, I was still selling deals for quite a few years. I carried on selling deals. We started doing a little bit of partnerships here and there, and then I started flipping some properties as well, because now I had some confidence and experience that I could manage a few trades. I couldn't do any handy stuff myself still, but I could at least understand a little bit of the project and get it done and get it delivered. So the investor would, I'd find the deal, they'd buy it, they'd put the money into refund it, I'd just oversee everything and we'd have a profit share. So we're doing some flips. And then the first 4-person HMO we did, which is again a property I'd sold to somebody, and we ran it as a 4-person HMO because I was trying to understand more about HMOs at the time. Probably must have been 12-ish years ago, something like that, 12, maybe 13 years ago. Then the numbers jumped massively. It was like £400, £500, maybe even £600 on a really good month. And that was, another big realization. You don't need 100 houses paying you 50 quid a month. A few of these can be life-changing. So then it was a case I was just on that, we need to do this. And then we started doing some rent-to-rent stuff as well in the early days, where we'd rent a property, turn it into a HMO. And so that's when the cash flow started building. But my mindset was, I have to do everything myself. I was scared of employing people again, because kind of what I've been through. I wasn't really comfortable taking on staff again and having all that headache. I still felt sore inside from what had happened. So I was doing crazy hours where I'd be sourcing property, talking to sellers, trying to find buyers. I'd be moving a tenant in, dealing with somebody's repair and it's HMO. So the nature being people are moving in and out, trying to do adverts, doing photographs. I was doing everything myself. I think when he had about 60-ish tenants, I was managing all myself. And there was other people I'd put money into stuff as well. So I was trying to juggle all this. And then I felt like I was going to burn out. I can't carry on doing this. Then I got my first help part-time. I thought I could maybe test it with somebody helping me part-time to do viewings. And then from the viewings, it's somebody doing admin, then somebody doing accounts. And then the team started to slowly grow. I built the confidence again that actually we have enough cash flow coming in that I can employ somebody else to do this.
So it was like the key thing you were doing different was more just keeping on track of the numbers and keeping a close eye on the
Yes,
numbers.
I was much more frugal in what I was doing. And I was still, when we were doing the flips, I was running around getting all the materials in for the builders because we're going to save £1,500 on that job. I'll buy all the materials. And I was running around like picking this up from there and getting that part from there, and I'd bring the something for the plumber, he'd look at it and say, no, it's the wrong one. Oh, okay, back again. And then that again took some time to realize I'm just wasting my time. I'm better off just paying these guys a little bit more. You just do the job and give me the key when it's done, and I go on and find the next deal. And I was constantly, I'd got into this environment of constantly learning personal development. I'd like deciphering books and learning as much as I possibly can about other people building businesses. And I was also fearful of not making the mistakes I'd made before. So I was hungry to understand, how do you build businesses? How do you build empires? We're not going to build an empire, but what's the logic? How does it work? What are the systems and processes people think about? And so that also helped me with the confidence of actually, there's only one thing I have that's the most valuable asset, that's time. I only have 24 hours of those every single day, and I don't know how many of those I have. So I need to make sure I'm as efficient and productive as possible every single day. And if it means I have to pay somebody else to go and do viewings, but actually that time it's going to free me up. If I can do 2 deals and they make 10 grand, I've paid half of his salary for the year.
The way I learned about time, I think it was a few years ago, they said, look, a viewing, for example, might be a £10 an hour task,
Yes.
£15 an hour task, and you're spending time getting there, fuel and everything. So all in all, it might cost you 50 quid.
Yes.
Like if you spend that hour, 2 hours, you can make £1,000.
Yes.
And that's the way I've learned about it. So for me, it's like to delegate as much as I can now.
Yes.
And I concentrate on the high value ticket.
The high value tasks.
And
Absolutely.
that's the way I now try to run the business. It's not as simple as that.
Yes.
Because sometimes no one turns up. Who's going to end up going
Yeah.
to the property? Who has to give the keys? You still have to do
And
bits.
you have enough broad knowledge about the business because you involved in it from the ground up, that if that key person doesn't turn up, your business is not going to fall
Yeah.
apart. You can still make it work because you have enough understanding of how the whole thing works. Another similar and simplistic way that I'd learned about this is a £10, £100, £1,000 task. A £10 task is something basic administrative that you can find anybody to do that for you.
16-year-old can do it.
Yeah, it doesn't mean that you shouldn't be spending your time as a business owner, somebody trying to build business, doing those kind of tasks. They're the tasks you need to get off your plate fast. Then a £100 task, you're more skilled type of person. And yes, you could do that. I could do my own bookkeeping, I could do the accounting, but actually somebody could do it much better and they might charge more, but actually they're probably going to do a much better job and you'll free up much more time. Then the £1,000 tasks are really like the high value tasks, the kind of thing somebody else can't do for you. So I couldn't have sent somebody else today to do this. Do you see? So the kind of things that you can't delegate, you have to do yourself, the ones that are high value, they're the ones we should be focusing on the most. That's kind of another way that I've learned a similar thing.
That's a very good, simple way to look at it because it splits it out into monetary terms.
Yes.
Essentially, that's what we're looking at. So that £1,000 sale, or nowadays we get 4 grand, 5 grand, 10 grand.
Yes.
That's what we should be focusing on rather than £10 or £100 tasks.
Yes. Yeah, and on team and delegation, one of the things also I kind of learned earlier was if you're going to free yourself up by having somebody running around do some stuff for you like £10 tasks, but then all you do is put your feet up and take a break, then you haven't achieved anything. You have to make sure you utilize that time for the high value stuff, be more productive.
You went from your IT business where you were focusing on a few different things to going into property where you still tried to focus on different things. Then you put your blinkers on and now you're again focusing on a few different things. Is that a trait in yourself or do you see that in a lot of different entrepreneurs as well?
Yes to both. So I think entrepreneurs, as we were saying earlier, have this mindset that constantly want to look for new things. So I've tried to suppress things and say, no, we're not going to focus on that. We're just going to focus on this thing. And it's really about doing that thing to the best of our ability and let it grow and build. Then we can go and do something else. So you're quite right in saying that actually we do a lot of different things now, but they've only come slowly over time. We haven't started lots of things at the same time. So it's not that we started spinning templates at the same time because that doesn't work. It doesn't work for me. So what I found is, okay, we build one business, we build that, getting that working really well. Then it's a case of who can work with us. So I have lots of business partners as well, who can work with us, who are key people in the business that can run that side, that will free us up to concentrate on something else and build something else. And so that satisfies the entrepreneurial need for wanting to do and start more things, but in a slow and measured way. That means we're not taking our eye off the ball completely from the first thing. And I think I remember a Gary Vee speech once where he was talking about young entrepreneurs where they've got 15 different businesses, they're making £50 from that one, £75 for that one, and they all amount to very little. Whereas actually if they focus all their skill on the one thing, they'll do way better than trying to do all these multiple side hustles.
What's your definition of a business working really well?
I think for me now, it's something that's reoccurring and produces healthy profits without you having to be there to run it. So it's systems, processes, and people's running those systems and processes.
So essentially, you just want to have it automated as much as possible.
Yeah, as automated as possible.
With staff.
Yeah, but it is still key people that you still, people are the key for us. I couldn't have done or built any of the stuff that we've had without all the people around me, because it just simply wouldn't be possible. But we have to build the vision, how it's going to work, how the process is going to work, to bring in the people, to pick that up, run that, and for other people to continue to grow it as well.
How do you find the right people? Because I was reading somewhere else, I think it was on LinkedIn, where someone said the single most hardest task for any entrepreneur is to find the right people.
Yeah.
And I've had it here.
I agree.
Some people I found are really good to work with, and it just takes a whole weight off your shoulders.
Yes.
And other people are just difficult, and it's draining more than anything.
There's a lot of people I've employed over the years, and I'm far from perfect at this skill of finding the best people. So when you mentioned it, I kind of smiled a little bit, thinking, I don't have the answer to that. And then you said it's the thing most people struggle with. I agree. They can make you or break you, depending on how you work. I think the thing that I've rightly or wrongly become is less emotional about it. Somebody works with me, do a fantastic job, great, we'll get on, we'll work together for a long time. If they don't, that's no problem, shake hands, thank you very much, goodbye, next. I don't get emotionally attached to the team. Don't get me wrong, there are certain A players in our team that I would bend over backwards and do anything I possibly could to help them and keep them, would never want to lose them, because they're absolutely key and pivotal in the business. And I want to work with them forever. And there'll always be people as well that come and go, and it doesn't really make much of a difference. So I guess I'm probably can give input on that, but not the best person in the world to probably answer that question.
I think when you find your A players, it's about just giving them the golden handshake and helping them in other aspects of their life, their personal goals, or whatever it is. And I think one of the most satisfying things for me is having a person here who's worked for about 4 or 5 years. Mm-hmm. He's bought his own flat, and I'm like, he's worked 4 or 5 years helping us build this business, and now we've helped him in the sense that he's worked hard, but we've given him the opportunity, and he's now purchased his own flat. And I think that itself, and I think that's happened 2 or 3 times, and it's like that's a very, personally, I think that's a very proud moment. Yes. So, what, this is what we've helped people to do, and then it's just giving them the right contacts, the right builders, the right solicitors, the right brokers, or whatever it is, to help them achieve their personal goal. And I think that's what keeps them loyal for me, because that's the golden handshake. Sometimes not necessarily about the extra 10 grand, 15 grand on the paycheck. It's showing that you will also go the extra mile for them. Yeah,
it's understand the personalities as well. There'll be some people that are very supporter mindset. They're very loyal. They'll stick to you like glue. Whatever you need, they'll be there. But they may not necessarily be the best person for whatever role they're in. But it's understanding they think in that way. Then there's certain people that are very aspirational, for example, that, they've got aspiration just like you. They don't want to work with you forever. They want to do what you've done. And they see you as a route for learning and path. And that's fine, as long as you understand that that's what they want to do and that's their aspiration. And so sometimes I'll say to people when they're working with me, I say, why do you want to do this? What do you ultimately want to achieve? And so, for example, I've had a number of people who were staff previously who now run their own property business, who've gone on to build their property portfolio. And that is, a really nice feeling that they've gone to that. But we understood that when they started. So it wasn't a shock. What? You now want to leave and do the same? There's no kind of bitterness, because from the beginning we understand that's their aspiration, and how can we support them in doing that? And often I say, well, give me 2-3 of your years. You commit, do the best you possibly can for me, and you give me 100%, then I'll give you 100% to kind of help build your thing. I'm hiring you to help me. I'm not hiring you to help you.
Yeah.
Right? So let's do that, and then I'll support you in what you want to do. That's absolutely fine. I'm happy to do that. And there's many other personalities, but understanding there's different personalities, and I'm very big in wanting to try and understand people and working with them in the right way. Then I think that also helps in having the right people in the right role. Like things like the psychometric profile test I would like to do on staff to understand the role that I'm hiring them for. are they suited to that role? Or is it just I think they'd be suited to that role?
So do you actually do the test?
Yes.
What kind of results do you
Like
expect?
disc profile, for example, is the most common one. You just Google disc. It's a very common to understand people's mindset and thinking. There's many others as well. And it's like, for example, I was saying somebody who's, for example, you could have somebody very people focused, and you could have somebody very task focused. So the task focused person will get things done based on they want to achieve the outcome. And that's my natural state. I'm task focused. I'm thinking outcome. Even before we started, I was asking about outcomes. And then you've got people that are people focused, and at all costs they want to make sure that person's happy and they've got everything they need. But they may not necessarily be working towards a task. And certain people benefit different roles. So for example, if you need somebody to lead a team to get things done, that task focused person can be the right person. Sales, for example, you need to close is done. And then somebody who's in a customer care type role, supporting clients, then that person who has that people-based personality, they would be much more suited to that role. But often in short conversation interviews, we don't understand that. And something like a DISC or many other type of profile tests help to understand their personalities and see, are they actually going to be suited in this role?
You need a bit of both, isn't it? You need a people focus and you need task focus.
I 100% agree. And these profile tests are not designed to pigeonhole people.
Yeah.
It's designed to understand people's natural strengths. Yeah, and I like to think I'm quite good with people, but my natural state is task focused. Yeah. So it's not that you can't do others, it's which is your strength, which is your natural kind of direction, as it were.
So would you say you're more people or task?
I'm very outcome focused. I'm always thinking, okay, what we're trying to achieve, how can we do it, what's the fastest, most efficient way to do it?
Because you're also good with people. You hold a lot of events. You've got a YouTube channel. You've had it for 10 plus years. You're quite well known on Instagram, TikTok, and constantly speaking. You've got your own podcast as well. Whereas I'm a bit more task focused, but I'm okay with people, I would say. But I don't think I have the confidence yet to hold an event like the way you have. So where do you get that confidence from?
So you may be a little bit surprised to hear I'm fairly introverted. So although I've got probably 26 staff, I work in my office by myself. I like my own space. So when you see someone on a stage, on screen, you think, oh, they must be extroverted. They're kind of very out there and loud. But these are all learnt skills. It's understanding that actually I need to understand people and connect with them to progress. So all the things you mentioned on social media, why do we do that? Why is, someone of my age on social media doing this stuff? Is odd. Most of my friends aren't that active because it's a business tool. All social media platforms are business tool. What do they do for us? They do one of three things. They bring people to us that might have deals that they might want to work with us on. They bring people who might want to invest with us, and they bring people who might want to learn from us in our trainings, our programs. And I'm very transparent about it. There's three things all of this marketing effort or the content that we produce creates. And what does it do? Ultimately, people will buy from people they know, like, and trust. We understand that. And what used to happen is there was a thing, I think, 8 touches to a sale or something like that, means that people would have 8 points of contact with somebody before they were ready to make a buying decision. That buying decision really is that they make a commitment of some sort, whatever that might be, whether to use your letting service, whether to buy a property, whether to do some training, whatever it might be. But now, through social media, what we're able to do is allow people to get to know us, like us, and trust us. So but when they pick up the phone to us, they've already gone through that process. They've jumped the queue to the front to say, hey, I'm ready to talk to you about maybe doing some business with you. And that's what really it does. So when I get questioned about how much time we spend on creating content and stuff, and how much money we probably spend on doing this stuff, I say, marketing is the lifeblood of all businesses, and it serves us really well, and that's why we do it, and that's why we'll continue to do it.
How much time?
I didn't do any dancing on TikTok. I just couldn't get my head around that.
You should try it next.
And you can put a few clicks on
just
likes.
Get Mo to do a CGI of you.
Yeah, all these deep fake AI now, we have to be very mindful of it.
How much time do you spend creating content?
Actually, I don't spend a huge amount. What I'd like to do, because because the way I tend to work, my diary is very compartmentalized in terms of certain parts of the week I'm doing these things, certain days I'm doing these things. Like Monday, mostly I do a lot of coaching, mentoring, a lot of training stuff I do on Mondays. And so what that means is my mindset is that's what I'm doing, I'm focused on that. And so I'd have a day where I'm doing content and video and stuff, and that's my preferred method. And so I'd go in for a day, we have our own studios and stuff, and if we're doing podcasts, whatever we're doing, we're just filming that day. Then the rest of the team will organize, the content, get it out wherever it needs to be, when it needs to go out. So I'm always thinking about how can I be most productive to do what we want to do, to continue to grow. I still have aspirations to do so much, and I'm still I'm still hungry. I still have a fire in my belly, and I probably will forever. I hope so. I have no intention of stopping or slowing. I don't want to. I can't see myself not doing anything other than what I'm doing, and I enjoy doing it. Otherwise, I wouldn't do it. And because I kind of think in that way, everything's kind of compartments where everything fits in. Like when we've been messaging, for example, you probably realize most of the time when you message, you'll get a response either later that day or the day after, and that's because I won't react to my messaging. My notifications will turn off, my phone's silent. So when I have time, I'll look at the phone, reply to that, deal with this, pass that to somebody else, as opposed to, oh, that's dinged. And if I'm doing that, then what's happening is other people are managing my time. They are demanding my time and demanding things of me as and when they want. But that's great for them, but it doesn't serve me. So what I try and do is allocate time to do certain things. So I'll try and say that at least once a day, go through my messages, respond to anything urgent, delegate stuff out to other people.
I've actually started doing that, as in terms of, because now WhatsApp's just another inbox. Email and WhatsApp is the same thing. In fact, email is just a formal.
Yes.
Send out the contracts, everything. All the negotiations happen through WhatsApp. And what I realized, I think literally just a few days ago, because I came back from Egypt and I had like 50 plus WhatsApps. I'm like, I can't be bothered dealing with it because yesterday I had a hectic day. But today what I did, I turned my Wi-Fi off, I turned my data off, replied to everyone, turned it back on, and then just continued. So because as you're replying to one person, you're going to get another reply. So I thought, forget it. And then I'll reply to them, or I'll have a quick browse and then reply to them again later. I think that's just helped because I'm not dealing with everything in one go. And half the time, them 50 chats, 10 are going to be about one thing, 5 are going to be another thing, 10 are going to be something else. Probably the only person I messaged today out of that time was you, just saying, see, you've seen a bit.
The only way. Yes.
And I think that compartmentalizing helps a lot, and just putting time blocks for everything.
Yeah, and also there's a technique called a Pomodoro technique, which is, it's like a timer, an egg timer. It's kind of essentially a tomato. I think it's an Italian concept. Where you allocate time to do something like 30 minutes and it ticks away in the background to that 30 minutes. And what it does, it focuses your mind, because when we think about tasks we're doing and we're doing multiple tasks, there's no such thing as multitasking. Your brain is focused on one thing at a time. When you're multitasking, you're spending 5 seconds on this, 10 seconds on that, minute on that, then you're going back to that. Then your brain's taking time to recalibrate back to that thing it was doing. Whereas if you just did that thing and completed that, you'd probably do that much more efficiently and probably to a better result than trying to do so many different things. And when we use something like a timer, the brain thinks, right, okay, I've got 30 minutes to finish this task, and you focus to get it done. Even whether you finish it or don't finish it, what it means is you're focused and you're conscious of there's time allocated to it. And I find that's much more kind of productive to work. I allocate this many time to do this thing, and I know I'll get it done. And also, getting tasks done that we'll all have tasks that we don't enjoy and we don't want to do, but we have to do them. We've all got stuff we have to, as much as we want to delegate as much as possible, we'll all have stuff we don't want to do. And Brian Tracy has this great book, Eat That Frog, which is about just getting all the horrible tasks out of the way with first thing in the morning. And that way you feel so much better that you've got it done. Often, once you've got it done, you think, oh, that wasn't so bad. Where you built this monster up in your head, you'd kind of imagine, I've got to do this, then that, it's going to take long, it's going to be headache, stress, whatever. When you do it, you think, actually, it wasn't so bad. It's just getting it done, getting it out the way with. So I try and, I'm certainly not a master of productivity, but I try and be as productive as I possibly can in the time. So like I said, we all have the same 24 hours. However amazing results somebody's achieving, anything, how on earth they're doing that, they all have the same 24 hours. The only thing is, we don't know how many of those we have.
What's your monstrous task that you tend to do most mornings? Obviously, we're different. But
Yeah, I'm still a control freak, so I become the bottleneck for a lot of things in the business, where I want things to be perfect, and I'm the kind of person, I'm looking at a document saying, why isn't the capital letter in the right place there? Why is the comma over there? Why are we left an extra space? I just like things perfect, and perfection is never attainable. It's always something we achieve, to aim for, but we're never necessarily going to achieve it, because there's always room for improvement. There's no, in my mind, there's no such thing as perfect. There's always room for improvement. But I try and aspire for perfection, and sometimes it means that certain tasks are done by the team members, then I put a hold on them because I want to look at them, and there's not enough hours in the day to try and do things, and then I'm getting stressed about, I've got my task list is just building of stuff that I need to do, and sometimes the case, right, Sunday it's a quiet day, I'm not going to get any phone calls, or it's a very early morning start, I'm not going to get bothered by anybody, I can now crack on and get these things done.
you mentioned earlier about you still have the fire in your belly. How and what keeps you motivated?
I think I'm very grateful for the life God has blessed us with, and I'm very content in what we have. And if He decided everything was to go tomorrow, so I'd be delighted about that. But if that was the choice, that's fine. I'd dust myself up and I'd get on again. I don't think we are built to work till we 65 or whatever, and then retire and then potter around. I don't get that, and I don't understand that. And I think you do what you do, and you enjoy what you're doing. And I enjoy what we're doing. I think we add value to other people's lives. We've got staff that benefit. We've got clients that benefit. People we train and support. We're building assets for family, for generational stuff. There's so much more I think is possible and capable. And why are we not doing it?
You mentioned about helping people. One thing you do is people invest with you, and you've got the Wealth Academy, and you help grow people's wealth. In fact, a few people on LinkedIn have actually messaged me saying, you need to get Saj Hussain on your podcast. I'm like, we're in conversation, it just hasn't happened yet. And they're from Birmingham, and they're like, no, he's really good, really nice to talk to. He explains things, he's very knowledgeable. What is it that you like about helping people?
If I think back to the days of our IT business, when I was talking about we were building the knowledge and understanding of how to get machines to talk to each other, when I'm going through the pain of getting certifications or qualifications in Microsoft, Cisco, Novell, all these exams to understand how to do stuff, my belief at that time was, I've developed this skill. You want that machine to talk to that one? Can you write the check and I'll get it done? It was a case of, you've got to pay me for my knowledge and my experience. So we'd hold our cards close to our chest in terms of information. And as I started getting involved in property and meet people, I found a completely different mindset. People are much more open and much more helpful. And if I'm being honest, I hadn't really experienced that before. And I couldn't understand why, if you're based in Birmingham, you're doing quite well, why are you helping me? I could be your competitor in the future. And your response might be, there's plenty for everyone. And that abundance, I didn't quite think in that way at the time. And I realized fairly early on, because when I was selling deals, I need to know people. I need to understand, when I meet you, what do you want, what are you looking for? I might be able to sell you a deal. That's how I started building my network initially. Then very quickly I realized, just by answering questions, helping you, connecting you, that person to that person, the whole thing comes back. It's a case of the more people you help, ultimately helping yourself. And then my mindset is, just help as many people as you can. It doesn't matter. I believe God's already written my destiny for me. It's just what route I choose to get there.
Yeah.
That's what it's about. It's not whether I'm going to get there or not. It's which route I choose to take and what decisions I make along the way. For me, that's quite important. And if I can help as many other people along the way, I have nothing to lose, only to gain. So my mindset has shifted completely in that sense.
Correct me if I'm wrong. This has just come to mind right now, but I remember watching a video of you a few years ago, and it was an event that you hosted. And usually when you go to events, the main host comes at the end on stage, hello, hi, everything. If I recall correctly, you stood by the door saying hello or salam to everyone that walked in.
Yes.
And I thought, by just doing that, you've created that, you've closed the barrier.
Yes.
And you've made people be unafraid to approach you. Because sometimes, like, I don't approach him, he knows a lot more than me.
Yeah.
And I remembered, I've just remembered it now, and I'm like, it makes sense why people in Birmingham are like, Saj is a really good guy, he's easy to talk to. It's because you've automatically shut down that barrier that, no, it's not, you can't approach me, make sure you approach me.
Yes. And in our networking events, we have this slogan, the more hands you shake, the more money you make. And,
so that's why.
So at our networking event, I try and meet everyone. And we got two types of events. We run one from our office where we have about 50 people, and we have a big one where we have 200 people, which we're restarting again now. So even at the events where we have 200 people come along, I'll try and shake everyone's hand and meet them. And that's deliberate because, people sometimes have traveled from London, Manchester, Bristol to Birmingham to come to an event I'm hosting to meet me as well. And if I'm so arrogant that I can't take the time to speak to them, that's not a nice thing. And I'd like to think I don't have a single bone of arrogance in my body. Humility is what's important to me. So I will make the effort to meet people and try and help and connect other people. And as I said, it started off by building a network of, we might be able to do business, to understanding actually the more people you help, it just comes back in abundance. It just comes back. So for example, somebody's stuck on a deal, you help them with it and say, have you thought about doing it this way, structuring it this way, this is how you might be able to get it done. That same person 2 years later might come back with a deal, they might end up doing business with you on something. And if they don't, I haven't lost anything.
We have that as well. Like, we build relationships, and some of the fruits come 5 years later. So
Yes.
Because sometimes they remember because you've helped them, but it's not just connecting them. You've helped them with knowledge and expertise, and it's like, okay, they've now come back saying, I have this problem, or I have this property to sell or property to rent, and it's my first one, whatever. I need your help. I need your guidance. And because of that, it just goes around. And sometimes you're not even doing it for that intention. Sometimes it's just, this person's in a bit of a pickle. Let's just help them.
Yeah, you do it with that expectation. And, if it's going to happen, it's going to happen. If it doesn't, it makes no difference.
Would you say that's one of the reasons people invest their money with you? Because they trust you, they trust your knowledge, they trust you as a person.
I think trust is important. It's also credibility and track record. And sometimes people talk about return on investment. And I say it's not just about return on investment, it's return of investment. And so many people invest in things and never see the money again. So it's having a track record and credibility of doing what we do and doing what we say we're going to do and do it again and again is important. And sharing that with people so other people can see what you're doing.
What's the difference between return on investment and return of investment?
So return on investment might be someone's investing 100 grand, they're expecting 20% return potentially on that, so 120 grand back. But if they don't even get the 100 grand back, so that's the return of investment at, even getting your money back. So sometimes people invest, I've got this like gazillion % return deal that I'm doing and it's fantastic. My return on investment is going to be outstanding. And I think, what about your return of investment? Are you even going to get that money back considering where it's gone?
What's your number one tip for someone who wants to get into property or even into business, and they feel like they don't have enough to start, or they don't have enough knowledge to start, or enough money to start? What's your tip to them?
I think, firstly, the most important thing for me is you have to have a desire to want to do it. It needs to be important enough for you want to do it. If it's a nice to have, if it's a really, we should do this, that's not going to be as effective as you must do it. So I can only relate and share my experience. So when I started in this business, it wasn't a case of, we should really do this. Because I must make this work because there is no other option. My backup is against the wall. It's like I'm standing on the edge of a cliff with my heels just leaning over. It's a case of there's no way back. We're going forward. So with that mindset, you push forward, but we all have different versions of that in our life. And if it's important enough for us, we have to then act on that. So how many of us have had an amazing business idea and we think, that's phenomenal. And then we see somebody else has done it a year later and you think, I had that idea. Well, you did, and so did 100 other people, but that person's the only one that did it. So you have to then turn that desire into action. And often the excuse is, I don't have the time and I don't have the money. They're the two biggest excuses. Oh, I don't have the time, I don't have the money, and the knowledge is the other one. Well, knowledge is no excuse. When I started, that was an excuse because it was quite difficult to get the information. But there's no shortage of information now. In fact, if anything, we are in information overload. I think just on my channel, there's some like 700 videos or something stupid like that. There's no shortage of information. There's plenty of information. We can get the information. You don't have to pay for it, but you have to then do something with that information. If you don't implement it, it's not going to work. So, I could say, I've read the books from cover to cover on push-ups, but I still haven't got the six-pack. Well, actually, unless I do what it says in the book, I might have read the book, but I ain't going to do anything unless you do something with it. So you've got to implement the learning, and then it's going to be hard. Property investing as a process is relatively simple. You buy a house, you add some value, you sell it on, you make some money, you rent it out, you collect some income, and that's it. But actually, what you'll find, it's simple, but it's not easy. There's a lot of there's lots of challenges that we'll face, but we've got to push through and persevere through those. If we give up and go crying home at the first challenge that we face, we're not going to succeed. We got to recognize it's going to be hard, but actually, there's a great saying that something along the lines of entrepreneurship is working a few years in a way that most people won't, so that you can have for the rest of your life what most people won't or can't, something to that effect. Meaning that you've got to do something different, you've got to graft and make that difference, but you can have the rewards. We live in an age and in a country where there is no ceiling from what we can possibly achieve, only if we want to. So it's having that desire, it's implementing that, and having the perseverance.
What if someone doesn't know what action to take?
So then the guidance is asking other people. That doesn't necessarily mean you have to pay for guidance. Some people will quite happily give you their time. And then there's training courses, knowledge, there's books. We can pick up a book now from somebody who lives at the other side of the world, who's probably the world's expert on that topic, and decipher all that information in a few hours. Knowledge is not an excuse. It's how much you want to learn something. And I'm a big fan of building knowledge, which is an inch wide and a mile deep. Meaning that you have insane knowledge and understanding of that topic, that you're a true expert in it. But you start at the top and start building it. You don't start at the bottom.
And how has being in property changed your life? Because you've been in property for about
nearly 18 years now.
18 years, yeah. So how has it changed your life?
It's changed my life massively. First, the obvious one is financially. It made a massive difference. And I do something that I love doing. I still love business. Business is my core thing. It just happens to be within property, and we've got lots of different businesses within the property space, and they're all connected because they are property related. And so I get to do what I want, basically when I want and where I want, and that choice has come from the stuff that we've done in property. So properties, I can't say anything other than it's completely changed my life.
In hindsight, I want to take you back to when you lost your IT business. What would you have done differently from the first day you lost that business?
Well, let me go back even further than that. When we were at university, there's 4 of us used to live in a shared house. And one day we sat around working out how much money our landlord makes. And we used to pay, and I was on the way, I was speaking to Kamal, and just as we were coming in, I said, when I was at university, we used to pay about £28 or £27.50 a week to rent a room in that shared house. And we worked out, our landlord makes about 100 quid a week, which seemed like a lot of money at the time to us, compared to, our income for the whole year was like £2,000 or something at that time. So we'd work out, and then we thought, we should all chip in and buy a house. And we went off shopping for a house. And we went and looked at houses, and they were like, this was in Wolverhampton, they were 20 grand-ish at the time. And we had this idea that we were all going to buy a house. We went around, looked at houses, and then a week later it fizzled away and we were doing something else, and we kind of lost interest. We should have bought houses then. That's what we should have done. And those houses that were 20 grand then are probably 200 grand now. Haven't checked recently, but I would be surprised if they're less than 200 grand now. And that's just over time. You don't have to be smart, but you have to be in the game. If you're not in the game, you've got no chance. But coming back to your question about what would I have done differently, the first thing is look in the mirror and accept that that person I'm looking at got me here, got me into this mess, and it's only that person's going to get me out of this mess. Accepting that sooner, and then dusting myself down and getting on again with things.
If you had Saj Hussain next to you, but at the time he opened his IT business, what's one key advice you'd give to him?
The one key advice, I get this question asked a lot in many different forms, and the answer is always the same, is put the blinkers on and focus on one thing and do it really insanely well.
It goes back to inch wide, miles deep.
Yes. Yeah. Because when you're doing something well, it's, in my mind, it's not good enough to be mediocre at it. You should be outstanding at that one thing. People should think you say, that guy, he knows everything there is to know on that thing.
What's the 2024 plans for Saj Hussain?
Doing more of what we're already doing. Really enjoy what we're doing. We're probably going to do less new build development right now. I don't think the market conditions are quite right for that. We are doing, so we were talking about sourcing, kind of where the business started, finding deals and selling them on. And as time moved on, we stopped selling deals and we just started doing stuff for ourselves and partners and buying with partners. And we've done that for many years now. But now we're thinking about maybe selling deals again, potentially, because we've been training people on finding deals. And market conditions, I think, are fantastic. I don't think they've been this good for at least 10 years in terms of buying property. And I think we have maybe a window, maybe a year. Election coming this year, things could change. So I think now's a perfect time to be buying, and that could also mean we potentially start selling deals again. We're flipping some HMOs at the moment, which we've never sold HMOs before, and we're doing that because I think market conditions are right. And something I did discover quite early in property is that the only certainty is constant change. And so what that means is that always be prepared for the unexpected. Things are always going to change. Don't think I've done this thing and that's it now. Things will always change. You have to adapt. It doesn't mean you jump around and do different things, but you have to be nimble enough and be prepared. As market conditions change, you change. Now, how many regulations have changed in property over the last 10 years? Loads. How many are going to change over the next 10 years? Probably loads. But it doesn't mean we say, oh no, that's the end of property, we've finished. You just got to adapt with the market. So, and I'm always open to that. So when you say, what does 2024 hold? We've got lots of interesting ideas. God knows what plans he has for us.
Just before we finish, we'll have a quick fire round. What's your favourite food?
Kebabs and chips.
straight into it.
Yeah.
Favourite holiday destination?
Anywhere where it's nice and warm. I just 22, 25 degrees max. That's what I like.
Not Middle East.
No. I mean, I think Dubai is probably a bit too bling bling for me. It's nice, but I don't feel at home in Dubai.
Favorite book?
How to Win Friends and Influence People is the one that made the biggest difference about understanding people. And that's something when I was trying to understand networking, reading that book made a big connection for me.
That was quite good because it's just about how you word things.
Yes.
And it's like basically being positive and everything.
Absolutely.
Rather than negative.
Absolutely. Even remembering people's names, Zaid.
That's who did that. If you had a superpower, what would it be?
If I had a superpower, invisible. Why would it be anything else?
For me, it would be knowing what other people are thinking.
Yeah.
So one step
That's
ahead.
Interesting.
And favorite day of the week?
Friday.
You were meant to say Monday, but we'll let you off.
My apologies. Edit that. Monday.
Saj, it's been a pleasure. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much for the invite. It's been such a wonderful experience and different questions that we don't normally have on an interview. So I enjoyed it. Thank you.